Okay. As far as lessons go, when we're doing this more, and I apologize we're in this seating, but I'm giving a quiz to my Cal kids today, so it's easier to leave the desk the way they're set up than it was to move everything around. Normally we'll be back in our groups. But when we're doing these kind of classroom type discussions, please feel free to engage in the lessons. If I ask a question and you think you know the answer, try to answer the question, because what's the worst that could happen? You're wrong. You're wrong. So some of you are thinking, oh my God, I would never answer a question that I'm not 100% sure of the answer, because if I'm wrong, people are going to think I'm stupid. Okay. How many people think that? See, you won't even answer that question, because I know you're all thinking it. You just won't answer it because you don't want people to think you're stupid, or that you think you're stupid by answering the question that you think you're stupid. It becomes a vicious cycle. One of the things that we talked about early on about social norms and class norms and things like that was that mistakes are encouraged. We want people to make mistakes because we can all learn from them. Okay, so this geometry thing, you're going to be learning a new language. And that language is going to allow us to communicate mathematically when we talk about things like geometry. In order to communicate effectively, we have to be able to... Hi.
Nicole?
Nicole. You in trouble? Okay, so keep your guard up. She leads with her right, so watch this side. Remember, her right is your left, so keep the left side up. Okay. So I'm going to start with this. There are a picture of two things. What's the difference between the... let's start with similarities. What do those two things have in common? Ethan.
They have fur.
Good. Okay.
They're both pets.
They're both pets. Okay.
They both have, a nose.
Good. And we can go through all, they both have two eyes, they both have a nose, they both have 2 ears, they have 4 legs, they both have a tail. All the body parts are there. Good. I'm sorry, what? They are made of cells. Good. They are domesticated. Very good.
They're mammals.
They're mammals. Excellent.
Their fur color is light.
In this particular case, yes, correct. They're both brown, light brown. Go.
You have responsive
You're a walking bio textbook?
No. We learned that in science class.
About those two things?
About all organisms.
All organisms have responsive what?
Stimuli.
Oh, which means what? If you do this,
You
okay, yeah, sue me now. Sure, go ahead. What are the differences between those two things? Andy. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. One is a canine and one is a feline. So in our basic discussion, where we haven't really defined anything, what does that mean?
One's a cat and one's a dog.
One's a cat and one's a dog. What else?
The dog has its mouth open and the cat does.
Nice. Ooh, good. Yeah.
The cat has a shadow. Or it's like, yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay.
The dog barks and the cat meows.
Okay. Good. Jack.
The dog has its ears down. The cat has its ears curled up.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to say.
Ear stuff. All right.
The cat has stripes.
You do that. Okay. So as go ahead.
The
Kim.
cat has the yellow eyes.
Yep. Dog has 4 and brown eyes. As we start to write definitions, and here's the weird thing, you're all going to write, for the most part, you're going to write definitions for the terms that we're going to be using in the class. As you start to think about definitions, you want to take those things into account. When I write a definition, I want that definition to accurately describe the thing that I'm talking about to the point that I can exclude other things but include others. In other words, when I define that term, it should include everything that fits into that term. Does that make sense? But exclude things that don't work. Okay. So we talked about those two. Do the same thing again. And so for instance, if I go back here, we're talking about 2 pets. if I want to define the term pets, I can include both of those things, yes? But I would exclude things like that chair. Because a chair, please tell me no one has a chair as a pet. Okay, good, then we're all safe. However, if I go back to this and I want to just define a dog, I have to be able to include all dogs, but exclude cats, and chairs for that matter. So now we do it again. What do those two things have in common? Augie?
They both have 4 legs.
Very nice. Jack?
They're both standing still.
Yeah, they're pictures, so yeah, if they were moving, then we'd be doing video. Ethan?
They both have a back.
Ooh, nice. Is that what you were gonna say?
Definitely.
Anything else they have in common?
They're both a shade of brown.
They're both a shade of brown, good. Anything else? Indeed. Yeah, we got that. Good. All right, what's different?
The dog is living and the chair is non-living.
Good. Tommy?
Sit on a chair.
You've never tried to sit on a
I felt
dog?
like.
I don't try to
I
sit
actually,
on my dog.
I ran a race 2 weekends ago, and there was a guy at the end of the race that had an English Mastiff. You ever seen one of these things? The dog's head was up to my chin on 4 legs. It was the most, I thought it was a horse. It was the most monstrous dog I've ever seen in my life. The dog's back was about waist level. I could have sat on that dog. You probably could. I could have ridden that dog around.
A dog could die, but you can't.
A dog can die, but a chair can't.
Dude, you
I
can
like
kill
it.
a chair easily.
I mean, you could have turned that more positive and said a dog is living and a chair is not, but you just want to go dark with that and talk about killing dogs. Respect. I like it. What do you got?
The chair is darker than
Dude, our
the
name isn't.
Okay, good. Anything else? Differences between a dog and a chair, Hannah?
The dog has fur and it's like soft, and the chair is hard and made of wood.
Good. And we can, here's the other problem, is we can keep going all day long. We can talk about how a dog has a mouth and a chair doesn't. So when we're writing definitions, we want to think about what's important and what's not. Okay. And what do we need to include, and what can we just include because we want to show people how clever we are. Okay, so in your notes, write a definition of that thing. I'll give you a hint, we'll all start together. When we write definitions, it's going to be in the form, if something is a blah, 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 then, so if something is a dog, then, all right, who wants to get us started? But
If something is a dog, then it is living, has 4 legs, and have features like eyes. And
okay, good. Now let's take Jack's definition of
oh,
brain.
and fur.
Okay, good. So the question is, if we find something that fits your definition, is it a dog?
Yes.
Can we find something that fits your definition that's not a dog? Like what?
Cat.
A cat. Okay, so is that a perfect definition? No. Because we can include things that aren't what we're trying to define. Other definitions. Like,
If something is a dog and it is a domesticated canine,
what do you think? Can you have a domesticated canine that's not a dog?
Yeah.
Canine the same thing as
I don't know, is it?
Yeah, you could have like a
Are all canines dogs and are all dogs canines?
Well,
Oh,
not
Can you, okay, hold on. Can you give me an example of something that's a canine but not a dog? A wolf. A coyote. Okay. And most people don't domesticate wolves or coyotes. Are there any other canines? No. How's that definition? Hannah, you're shaking your head no, you don't like it? So, are you being a skeptic now, Hannah?
no.
No, you are. The answer is yes. Yes, say it loud, say it proud. Okay, so remember we talked about being a skeptic? That's where we're talking, that's where this comes into play now. Okay? She's disagreeing, that's fine. You can be a skeptic a couple different ways. You can disagree with the statement, or you can ask for clarification of the statement. So you disagree, why don't you like that, Hannah?
Because it's not, it's specific, like a canine could be so many different things.
Okay, I was gonna go down a different route too, and I was gonna say, well, what if the person doesn't know what a canine is? You're using words in your definition that might not, the reader might not know what that means. It's not horrible, it's a good start. What else? Other suggestions? What do you got?
There's still wild.
Oh, you wanna be a skeptic?
Sure.
Go.
There's still wild dogs around. No, some of them are not domesticated.
You're right.
Yeah, I said it's domesticated, not just.
Right, but what he's saying is you could have a dog that's not domesticated, that you could have a wild dog.
Well, you can't have it as still a dog. You can't have it as.
Why can't you have it? You
Yeah,
can't
you
have a
can't
wild
have
dog.
it, but it's not.
Keep a wild dog in your garage.
It means you can't, but like it's still a dog.
All right. We're not trying to define a dog for, oh, now you want to go down that route, huh? Okay. So Isabel just said golden retriever, that's a golden retriever. Now you enter in a whole new world of hurt here. Because now, not only do we want to define a dog, but now we have to work this term of golden retriever into it. The other thing that pops up is this idea of dogs, and I'll use this example all the time. Are all golden retrievers dogs?
Yes.
Good. We agree on that. Are all dogs golden retrievers?
No.
No. You could have a Chihuahua. Well, it's funny you mention that. When we started this, we were defining a dog. But now, what if we want to define a golden retriever? Now we have to take into account the difference between these two things. How do you define a golden retriever versus a Chihuahua versus just defining a dog? The point I'm trying to get to is that this is a difficult thing to write definitions. We get very nitpicky, we have to be very nitpicky, and we have to be very accurate. It's, you know, defining a dog is not an easy thing, that's why I went with it. Because I wanted to get into the discussion of what's wrong with definitions, is that a good definition, is that a bad definition? Okay. Now, how do we apply that to geometric terms? Well, after that 20-minute discussion of definitions, we're actually going to look at three things that don't have definitions. They have descriptions, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to start with this concept first. The reason this slideshow is called building blocks is because we're looking at the building blocks of geometry. What are the small things that are used to build all the other things in geometry? The most basic construction piece that we use in geometry is a point. So, what's a point? When's the last time you had geometry? 4th grade? 5th grade? No. If I do this, let's see, come over here, get my pen out. you see that? Is that a point? Okay, no, yes. Yes? How many think yes? Raise your hand. How many think no? Raise your hand. For those of you that said yes, somebody tell me why.
Because it is a location.
Okay, good. For those of you that said no. Somebody
Has the shape and the size.
has a shape and a size. Okay, so if I do this, is that a point?
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
Is that a location?
Yes.
Yes.
Is this a location?
Yes.
These are both locations.
Yes.
Is this room a location?
Yes.
Is Arlington Heights a location?
Yes.
See my point? No pun intended. Okay. For our purposes, what we're going to do is think about points as having no size. What the heck does that mean? How can it have no size? How can it be there if it has no size? So you take that, a big fat marker, and you put a point on a piece of paper. Instead of a marker, then you use a pen, and you put a point on a paper. And then instead of a pen, you take a really sharp pencil and put a point on a paper. Instead of a pencil, you use a needle and poke a hole representing a point. And keep getting sharper and sharper and sharper. That point will continue to get smaller and smaller and smaller. How small does it get? It gets infinitely small. So small that it has no size. And this is where people start freaking out. For our purposes, we're going to use that first thing that I drew to represent a point, which we'll call a dot. But a point for our concept is so small it doesn't exist. Okay, so I got a little Dixie cup in my hand. How many points would fit into that cup? Infinite. How many points would fit into this room?
Infinite.
Which one has more points in it, the Dixie cup or the room?
Either, because they're both infinite.
Good. They would have the same amount of things in it, infinite. There's no such thing as infinity and beyond. Buzz Lightyear was wrong. Okay. Infinity is infinity. If this scrambles your noodle, that's okay. It's not supposed to make sense. We as humans aren't very good with the concept of infinity. Okay. So what we need to do is figure out a way to represent this thing called a point. Okay. So we're going to do that. We're going to draw a dot, and we're going to label it with a capital letter. And so whatever works best for you to visualize what this looks like. Some people can handle the concept of it being infinitely small, not existing. Others like to refer to it as a dot. Some people will picture points as like tiny little golf balls. Or like BBs. Whatever works for you. And again, we label those with capital letters. I'm sorry.
What's the label? What is the label?
The label is how you denote. So if I put a bunch of points on a screen, I want to be able to refer to the different points. It's like giving them names. So the label is used as a capital letter. The reason it's called an undefined term is we're not really defining it, we're talking about the properties of it. The property is that it's a location, the property is that it has no size. It's really difficult to define, like the concept of time. Can you tell me the definition of time? It's a difficult word to define. You can talk about what time does, how it works, involve clocks and do all this other business, but it's a difficult phrase. Okay. Second one, a line. This one you should be able to handle. What's a line? Marcel,
Point to point.
Not necessarily.
be more specific.
An edge that goes from one area to another.
And what are those areas?
Maybe it's
So if I go from this area to that area up by Hannah, is that a line?
yes.
Okay.
Completely.
But a line goes on forever. Stephen?
A line in between 2 points.
Okay, the other thing we can't do is we can't use the term we're trying to define the term, what's a dog? A dog is a dog. Okay. So can you rephrase that statement not using the word line?
2 points connected together.
two points connected together. And what are they connected with?
A line.
All right, just to make sure we're on the same page, in your notes, just draw a line. Show me what it looks like. Brianna, do me a favor. Go up to the board. You get to use the new technology. Grab that left pen. Good. And click over on the side of the board somewhere. Over on the side. You'll see something. Go ahead. It doesn't matter where. See that stuff pop up? Third one down is the pen. Click on that. Good. Choose pen. Pick your color. Well, I think you're going to use red. That's okay. Draw me a line. Awesome. Thank you. Let's give it up. Golf clap. Oh, wait. You're not done yet. Click on the pen thing again. The third one down. Click on pen again so it goes away. Outstanding. Okay. How many agree that that's a line? Raise your hand. Well done. You got about half the class behind you. The rest of you who don't agree, raise your hand. Who doesn't know and is confused?
Put your hand down, stop.
Okay, for those of you that said yes, Patrick, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Yes? Why?
Because it's like why?
Is that what you drew in your notes?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Who said no? Augie, why?
Because there's an end to it.
It starts and stops.
Yeah.
Okay. Brianna, that line that you drew, what's it made up of? If I zoom in on that line, what is that made of?
Like on like the screen or just like in general?
Just in general. If I take the geometric idea of a line and you zoom in really close on it, what are you going to see?
Just like only the line because it's so close.
And what's that line made of?
I don't know.
Okay, good.
Points.
Points. Good. Remember, this is building blocks. So this line is we're going to take these points. We've got this idea of a point now, and then we're going to start lining up these, no pun intended, we're going to take these points and put them next to each other. And so if we zoom in on that line, we're going to keep zooming in and keep zooming in, and you're going to see a whole bunch of points lined up. So in simplistic terms, if you want to think about it, it's like laying a bunch of golf balls next to each other, and eventually they continue. And then Augie, you said you didn't like the fact that it goes on, it doesn't go on forever. Could she have drawn that?
Yeah, with two arrows on the sides. Like an arrow on each side.
Oh, okay, so now before I say anything, Ethan, what do you got?
Wouldn't it be okay for it to end because like a Y could just go from point A to point B?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It doesn't go on
Yeah,
forever. all
Lines
the time.
they can go on forever, but they don't need to.
No, line segments. That's a line segment.
But
That's
still
still a
line.
So
That's
it's just
still
a
a
part of the
line.
line, that's still.
All right, let's go back to, real quick, was it you that were saying from point A to point B? Okay, there's an infinite number of points on that line. He's talking about going from point A to point B, so I'm assuming you mean, like, let's call that endpoint A, that other endpoint B, and draw a bunch of points in between, right?
Sure.
Good. There's an infinite number of points on that line, but he's decided I'm going to make two of them special and I'm going to give them names. One's going to be called A, one's going to be called B. That's fine, and we'll get to that later. So you were saying, Augie, that you put, what did you say now? That it doesn't go on forever. And that if she put arrowheads on it, she'd be good. All right, so representation versus actuality. If I go back a couple slides, okay, now this is going to seem strange. What are you looking at? No. No. That's a picture of a
A
dog.
bunch of dots.
Okay. Now, the idea of that being a picture of a dog is kind of a jerk statement, but it's important here. I don't know if her line's still going to be there. It is still there. Beautiful. Is that actually a line?
Sure.
No, because we all agree that the line has to go on forever, right? Can she draw a thing like that that goes on forever?
No.
No, but she can represent it by
Arrows.
arrowheads on it. Okay. So you should have arrowheads on both sides. What you drew is important, which we'll get to later. Not a line, though, because it doesn't have arrowheads. I think you used the term. What is that thing? Yeah, that's a line segment. Okay, so now we need to know how to name a line. We can name points. There's a line. 3 different ways to name that line. So, like Ethan did, I picked 2 points on that line and I made them special. I gave them names. There are an infinite number of them. I took 2 of them. I called one B, I called one C. And then you see that little M there. I'll get to the M in a second. If you want to name that line, you can do it using the following methods. 2 points on the line, put a line symbol over it. Pretty straightforward. If I'm talking about a line, you put a line over it. However, order is not important. I could also do this. Or the third way is sometimes lines will have little letters attached to them, so you could also call that the line M. This third one is not the most common way to do it, but it does pop up every once in a while. Most commonly, we're going to take 2 points on the line and use the line symbol for it. Okay, we good? Any problems?
So should we know the lowercase letter? Or do...
If it's given to you, you can use it, or if you want to throw it in there, you can use it. But for the most part, you're going to be picking the 2 thingamajobbers, the 2 points on the line. Okay, so when you're drawing lines, make sure you include arrowheads. Make sure you know how to name it. All right, so now let's talk about dimensions. How many dimensional world do you live in? 3, right. Length, width, height. How many dimensions does a line have? 1, length, that's it. Because remember, it's made up of points. Those points have no thickness, so that line goes on forever and ever in one direction. How many dimensions does a point have? 0, which makes no sense whatsoever. So I took a 0-dimensional point, I lined a bunch of them up and got a line into 1 dimension. Now what if I take the line and stretch it in the other direction? 2 dimensions. 2-dimensional geometric building block. Any ideas? You could start using terms like square, rectangle, all those other things, but it has to go on forever. We get something called a plane. This idea of a plane is not real crucial for us because almost all of the geometry that we're going to do takes place in 2 dimensions on a flat surface. The paper that you're writing on, the screens that you see. Later on in second semester, we'll do 3-dimensional geometry where we start looking at pyramids and spheres and all kinds of 3D stuff. But for now, just 2 dimensions. Okay. Big, giant, flat surface. Piece of paper so big it goes on forever and ever. How to name them? Well, let me give you, there's a picture of one. But remember, that's not a rectangle, that's not a parallelogram. I'm using terms we haven't talked about yet. It goes on forever and ever. That's a representation of a plane. 3 points on the plane, or you can use a fancy script letter that shows up in the corner. I think that's a K. What time is period over?
55.
9:30.
Or 9.
Is it 03 or 55?
03.
03, okay, we're doing okay.
The specials, the 70s, 55.
All right, let's take a break for a second before your brains melt. As far as taking notes goes, you have to decide what's going to work for you the best. In other words, some of you are going to write down every word that I put on the screen. If that's what works best for you, great. Some of you will write down nothing. Those are the two extremes. You need to decide what's going to work best for you. What's going to help you understand. If we go over a slide and you get it, it makes sense, you've processed it, don't write it down. If something's a little shaky, write it down. So I'm not going to grade your notes. I'm not going to collect your notes. The notes are for you. And you might find as we go along that, oh, I'm writing way too much information. Oh, I'm not writing enough information. You can start to adjust as we move along. Okay, so normally you're going to write definitions. I'm going to give you your first two. You don't have to write these. Collinear. Well, we can probably figure this out though. What does linear mean? Sorry? Straight. What does co mean? What's the prefix co? Together. Okay. Straight, line, together, together on the same line. Okay. Two or more points that lie in the same line. If you put a non in front of that, what does that mean?
It's not. Less than 2 points. That many points.
No, easier than that.
1 point.
Two or more points that are not on the same line. Two points will always be on the same line. 3 points can be non-collinear. Getting this under control means that the next two will be easier. Is everybody good? If I go too fast, by the way, just holler and I'll slow down, or you can always go back and reference the slides for the video later. Coplanar. Guesses?
More than one.
Maddie, would you say?
Co means together.
And planar?
Together something.
And what's planar mean? If collinear means on the same line, what would coplanar mean?
Same plane.
On the same plane, right? Two or more points on the same plane. Which would also mean that non-coplanar would be
Not on the same.
not on the same plane, right? We are all on the same plane of the third floor. Somebody who's on the second floor would be non-coplanar to us because they're on a different plane of the second floor. We're on the plane of the third floor. Okay.
Can you go back to it?
Sure. Now the fun comes about trying to draw some of these things. I think you all demonstrated your ability to draw a line. I'm sure some of you drew the picture of the plane in your notes, but let's try doing something like this. Draw a line XY passing through the plane R. Not on the plane, but passing through it. Label the point where it intersects the plane as the second letter of your first name. So the first thing you might want to do is visualize what I'm asking you. I've got a plane, I've got a line going through the plane, and then all the proper labeling. Hopefully no one has X or Y as the second letter of their first name. Second example, two lines M and N that intersect at the point Q. That one's quite a bit easier. And again, sketch those in your notes. There are my two examples. Yours don't have to look exactly like that. Why? Yeah. Angled like that? No, you could draw, like a rectangle or whatever. And question or stretching?
Stretching.
Stretching, beautiful. Okay, so my answer for number 1, notice that the line passes through the plane. I have the points X and Y on the line, and then, by the way, that point where it intersects is sometimes called the foot. That's not drastic information, but a little buzzword there for you. And then the second one, the lines don't have any points on them except for the point Q that they share in common. Arrowheads on all the lines, otherwise you have a different animal there. Problems, questions, concerns? We're good? All right, we're done. First day. You don't need to applaud, that's okay. Any part of that you have questions about, anything that's not clear? So, as far as homework goes, you'll see that unlike a lot of other math classes, you don't have an excessive amount of homework. You might see on the homework you have like 5 or 6, maybe 8 problems. However, each one of those problems is crucially important. So instead of giving you 10 problems of the same thing over and over again, which just becomes silly work, I've cleaned it up and boiled it down to a more intense is not the right word, a cleaner homework scenario. If you get into your homework and you get completely confused, ideally you want to come into class every day with your homework as complete as possible. I'm here bright and early in the morning. So if your homework just blows you out of the water, then you can come and see me when you get to school. I'm usually in here or in the math office and ask some questions. If you're working on your homework during your study hall for a period, you have some questions, come up to the math science room and get some help. Don't think that all your problems are going to be solved in class. That's not necessarily going to be the scenario. And plus, I will tell you from experience, a lot more learning happens in a one-on-one scenario than it does in a group environment. Does that make sense? Okay, question? Okay, anybody else? Awesome. Have a great weekend. Get your homework done early so you don't have to worry about it over the weekend. Life is good.